Good morning. It is my honor to welcome you to the School of International Service, or as we fondly call it, SIS. My name is Nina Yamanis. I'm Associate Dean for Graduate Education and Professor in the Department of Environment, Development, and Health. I am truly delighted, together with our partners at the Women and Politics Institute, to host this early celebration of International Women's Day. At SIS, we are proud that 46% of our faculty are women. They are leading experts in fields such as cybersecurity, international economics, subnational politics, humanitarian affairs, migration and human rights, and global health, which is my own area of focus. Their work reflects our deep institutional commitment to advancing knowledge, equity, and women's leadership across sectors and around the world. I am also a great admirer of women ambassadors, not only because of the well-known television show, but because they represent leadership, diplomacy, and public service at the highest levels. It is therefore an honor to welcome such an extraordinary panel of ambassadors from across the globe. I am pleased to welcome Her Excellence Mathilde Mukantabana, Ambassador of Rwanda. Her Excellency Dina Kawar, Ambassador of Jordan, a nation that has hosted many of our study abroad students. Thank you. Her Excellency Catalina Crespo-Sancho, Ambassador of Costa Rica. SIS has had a 22-year partnership with and dual degree with the University for Peace, which is in San Jose and is a UN-mandated institution for promoting education on peace. And finally, Her Excellency Svanhildur Valsdóttir, Ambassador of Iceland. This event exemplifies the very best of American University, our commitment to service, to global citizenship, and to supporting women's active leadership and participation in the public sphere. We are honored to have you with us for this celebration today. Thank you for coming. And thank you. And with that, I am delighted to turn it over to your moderators, Women in Politics Institute Executive Director, Betsy Fischer Martin, and our own Kelly Adams Smith, SIS Adjunct Lecturer and Career U.S. Diplomat. Thank you.
Thank you all and welcome. Kelly and I are also AU alums, both of us. So I'm delighted to welcome you all here and to co-host this event in our School of International Service. And we're delighted to partner with them on this program, and thank you to them for hosting us in their beautiful building. I want to also thank Dr. Garrett Martin. He's going to be embarrassed because he didn't even want to get in our all-women's photo, but he's been a terrific help in putting this event together as well. So I want to thank him. Just to give you a little bit about the Women in Politics Institute, our mission is pretty straightforward. We work to close the gender gap in political leadership in the U.S. And we do that through academic courses, through research, and we also run a campaign training program for young women called We Lead. In fact, we just graduated our cohort last night at the National Press Club from that event. They all want to make a run for office, and we're delighted to encourage them to do that. So the events like today really go to our mission because they broaden the conversation and they connect us to global perspectives. Here in the U.S., we have made real progress. We have elected a record number of women to Congress a few years ago. And still, when you look globally, the U.S. ranks 84th out of 184 countries in the number of women in our legislative branch. So still more work to be done. So the goal today is simple. We are here to learn, We want to learn about what's working in other countries, to understand what still makes this so hard, right? And to hear how women around the world across different cultures and political systems are building power, shaping policy and peacemaking, and expanding their opportunities. So each of the ambassadors that are here with us this morning brings an extraordinary personal story and a front row perspective on the successes and the challenges of advancing women's equality and representation in their home countries. So just to give you a little bit on of our conversation, Kelly and I will moderate a discussion here, and then we have made sure to save plenty of time for your questions at the end. So there's a microphone stand up there with no microphone yet, but there will be one there. So I'll let you all know when it's time for questions, and if you wouldn't mind just lining up and we can go through the questions as quickly as possible. So we'll get started, and I wanted to start with Ambassador Mukantabana. And she is a great friend, and we're so excited that she's here with us today. But I thought we would start with each of the ambassadors to give us a little bit about their own personal story, just a few minutes, and to let us know sort of your commitment to public service and what prepared you for leadership and for this post as ambassador, where you have been for many, many years. So share with us a little bit how you got here and your story and what this means to you.
Start by thanking you for
Here, take mine. I'll mess with yours. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So let me start by expressing my gratitude for putting all of us here, and it's an honor to be sitting with my colleagues who are great friends as well. Even sitting here is historical in its own kind, because when I came here to the United States, and I was the first woman ambassador from my country coming here, but also finding a few women ambassadors. I'm looking at Jan, and she knows, because we were very few in this field. And for now, I think we are counting around 45. Some of the colleagues have left. But to find here, and it was hard to navigate even then, because when we met our colleagues who were males, usually they thought we were the spouses. So it was very difficult even to establish ourselves and to find a certain forum or space in Washington, D.C., because it was pretty rare, to find many female ambassadors. So I'm extremely happy to be sitting with my colleagues and to be with you, because like what you were saying, among the things for us to be able to survive Washington first, it's the people like Betsy, because they came and Jan, they embraced us. We were able to find a community willing to also to mentor us. Navigating Washington, if it's your first time, before you can know where the Congress is, you have even to know where the street is, And then to understand the different importance of Congress, of the State Department, and many different things, it's very, very difficult. But let me start by saying quickly about my journey. I'll make it very short. I come from disruption. So from the moment I was very young, 13 years old, I think I started to develop a certain leadership position, because I left my country at 13, no parents. We had to go through exile. We went to neighboring countries, eventually Uganda, somewhere else. So survival, but also to be able to say, how can I make a difference? Because when you are facing statelessness is like being an orphan. It's even higher, because usually when you lose parents, there is also a whole community around you. But during that time, there was no community. So you either sink or swim. And what I can say from my experience, I think we swam. But also it's a time when you ask yourself some existential questions. It's a pretty existential. It is say, who am I as a person? Who am I as a Rwandan? Who am I as someone in the global community? And then once you establish this, sorry. Once you've established this, again, you can take it from there. So for me to get to the ambassadorship, it's because of what I did before. And I have to say, the country I'm sitting in, it gave me all the opportunities. It's a context like this, education, but also communities that were able to embrace you and to be able to give a sense to your life, and then eventually to come. But you had to set yourself up for something and to say, I live in challenges, how do I deal with the challenges? Once you start from the beginning, I think you become very resilient. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I must say your microphone is made for men, maybe.
There, you got it. Ambassador Kawar, you have led at the UN and in major diplomatic posts. What were those inflection points for you that opened the door to your career as an ambassador?
Well, to start with, first of all, thank you. I don't want to repeat the same thing, but it's a pleasure for me to be here with my colleagues, and thank you for your invitation. I went to school early on. I finished school early on and went to the United States, and I chose the furthest point from Jordan at a time when there was no WhatsApp, no FaceTime, so it was very convenient. But at the time, it was I wanted to study international affairs, and my family wanted me to become a doctor. So to make them happy, I started with the biology school, and kept getting this cadaver out and looking at it. And then I said, I got fed up. I said, it's not my thing. So, and then went back home and worked in the office of the Crown Prince, who is an amazing man and taught me a lot. And I owe him a lot of things. But then the reason why I'm here is because His Majesty King Abdullah, when he came in power, there were no women ambassadors in any post anywhere in the world, and he wanted to start having. So I was a political appointee, and I was appointed to France. That was my first appointment. Of course, at the time, everybody felt it was a big post for somebody who came out of the blue. But I stayed 13 years, and so afterwards, I went to the Security Council to finish the mandate. As you know, we have 2 years. And so the ambassador before me had to leave because he was appointed Human Rights Commissioner. And so I was asked to go in and fill in. And I knew nothing about the UN, much less about Security Council. But I think if I had to do it now, I wouldn't have the courage. Sometimes ignorance is good. You just jump the deep end and you don't know what you're doing, and you just do it, And I finished that and was moved to Washington. But I'd like to, reiterate, Washington is a thing of its own. You have to understand the system, but not only understand it on paper, you have to feel it. And it's something that you cannot teach others. You have to just go in and find your way. And there are amazing people in this city and who promote a lot. One of them is sitting here. She's always doing these events for women and getting together diplomats and members of Congress, which is a fantastic thing. But there is this feeling of sisterhood between us, the colleagues, but also when we see members of Congress, when we see other members. And this is something that's beautiful, and I cherish it a lot.
Ambassador Crespo-Sancho, whose son, by the way, graduated from SIS last year. So we are delighted to have her back on campus. Tell us about your background, because it spans academia, human rights, development work. You went to school here in the States and at Buffalo, of all places. Tell us about your career path to be an ambassador.
I've had that question asked many times, and I answer the same way. I have no clue how I ended up here. In a good way, yes. In a very good way. So I started out as a teacher, little kids, and then I had that little, when my colleague, the ambassador of Rwanda, was saying, there's something that you're thinking, how can you make the world a little bit better? You know, I grew up with that. And I'm sure all these women here are going to tell you the exact same thing. There's a little something. How can you make the world just a little bit better? So then I'm like, okay, what do I do? So then I got a scholarship. I got a Fulbright, went to get my PhD, where I worked with, you know, like did all these on-campus things and was the president of a graduate student association and human rights things. And we did all these, like, you know, grad school when you're an activist and you have time to do it and you're working at the same time, but you have the energy. I remember before going to Buffalo, as a Costa Rican. So imagine me with the warmest sweater that I had, which is like a cotton little thing, and getting to Buffalo, and I'm like, what was I thinking? But I love Buffalo. I love the people. I love it. So I get there, and I said, okay, what's my next step? What am I gonna do? And I remember my grandma. That's one of the messages that maybe my generation would get more. Hopefully your generation doesn't get as much. And my grandmother, I was a single mom of a 6-year-old, and she would say, they call me Kati, and she's like, Kati, why don't you stay here in Costa Rica, marry a really nice man? This is a woman that loved me. And stay here, and you know, that he can support you and your child, and I said no, and I got on a plane and left to Buffalo. But those are messages that you hear throughout your life, which are very interesting. And that's not the only one. You know, throughout my life, or all of our lives, we've heard many. You know, I got into, I think a year ago, I came to Dulles, and the guy that was on immigration, they're like, oh, so you're the spouse of the ambassador? And I'm like, no. I'm the ambassador. Oh, excuse me. And I'm like, come on, nowadays, really? So those are things that we actually get quite often. If you're too serious as a woman, then you're too serious. If you're too nice and too kind, then you don't have a leadership style. So all these messages that we hear constantly, that we still need to challenge. But let me go. So I finished that. I went to an academic career because I'm like, I want to be a professor. I got a PhD. This is going to be so great. I taught at University of Georgia and then at Columbia University. I'm like, no, academia is not my area, although it's fantastic, but not my specific area. So then I became the High Commissioner and the Ombudsperson of Costa Rica, and you know, the president of all the human rights institutions of Central America and the Caribbean, and we did a lot of work on conflict prevention and with the World Bank. I'm like a Generation X with a millennial career, which is very weird. Usually all my friends start in one place and 30 years later they're in another place. These women here, you're going to see them that we've jumped, to a lot of different places. So after that, my president, he called me up and said, Catalina, what would you like? And I said, well, UN. Human rights is he calls me up 3 months later. He's like, I have bad news and good news. And I'm like, what's the bad news? He's like, oh, no UN. And I'm like, oh, no. I said no to my job again in the World Bank on prevention of wars. And, what am I going to do? All that in like 20 seconds, right? He's like, but the good news is I want you to go to Costa Rica. So I'm a political appointee to Costa Rica, to the U.S. So I'm like, oh, fancy, because we have had women before. I'm the third woman to be ambassador here. And yes, like my colleagues have said, it's a whole different, DC is a whole different ball game. Yes, completely different. Networking is beyond what we all used to. But I found one thing, and that's one thing that I found in my colleague men too, but especially in my colleague ladies and the ones who are here and some other ones that are there. They genuinely care. networking is about talking to the person in front of you and generally caring who you are, how we can help each other, not like, whoa, what can you give me? So I don't know if you've seen in DC, when you're networking, they're talking to you, you're like, oh, let me see who's coming. Oh, and that's more important than you, bye-bye. But being successful here is generally caring about the person who's in front of you. That can be, the scheduler from the senator's office, or it could be the senator itself. So
that's such an
that's
important point.
Here. Thank you.
That's such an important point. Thank you. Ambassador Valsdóttir, you are relatively new in your tenure here, but you've had an incredible career yourself in a lot of different areas in business and government and even journalism. Tell us how those worlds came together and how are you finding your time here in Washington?
The easiest answer is it's interesting.
Yes.
And first of all, please call me Svanhildur. No one goes by their last name in Iceland. We are all on first name terms. Doesn't matter if you're the prime minister or the president or the teacher at school or whoever. Everyone is called by the first name. So I'm Svanhildur, please. Well, how it all came together, it's a good question. Well, because you've been asking us all about, how did we end up here? The short answer is I got asked, and it's really hard to say no when someone asks you to serve your country. Because as people tend to say now, it was not really on my bingo card becoming an ambassador. But I'm here, and it's great, and in many ways, I have these women here. I have a lot to be grateful for, but their companionship, their friendship and their support does matter a lot. And that's something that I think that we all have to keep in mind, is to pay forward, Do what you can to pay forward. Do what you can to, as Catalina said, care about people and listen to them. And if you see things that you think that really need to be changed, do your utmost best to be the change. And take part in the change. Don't wait for someone else to do that. But anyhow, you talked about journalism. Yeah, well, I have never actually realized that I also had a millennial career because I'm a Gen X. I'm born in 1974. But apparently I have. So I always wanted to be a lawyer. So I studied law. Then I found out that maybe there were more fun things in life than being a lawyer. And that was journalism, which is kind of my passion. I've always been interested in, my community, in society, in politics, and all sorts of things. And, being a journalist just gave me an opportunity to get close to all sorts of things I was interested in. It's an amazing opportunity to talk to people, and if you're a little bit curious, it's the perfect profession. I was a journalist for about, I would say, 15 years at least. I worked at a newspaper, then I went to radio, and I was a TV host and an editor. And then I sort of found the calling after we had the economic crash in Iceland to go do something about what was happening. So I started working for a political party. I was the Secretary General of the parliamentary group of the Independence Party for a few years. Then I became advisor to the chairman of that party, and then I was advisor both to the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister. And after quite a while, I thought, well, I think I've paid my dues to society. We're in a good place now, and I'm not saying it. I did that, but anyhow, it was. I thought, okay, I'm going to go back to the private sector, which I did for about 3.5 years, and then I got the phone call, and I'm here. So that's kind of both the long and the short version of that history. But yeah, but I was just when I was listening to all of you, because these women here, it's really hard. They're a hard act to follow in so many ways. But I was thinking about what Mathilde said about coming here and being one of only few women in the diplomatic corps. It has fortunately been changing a lot. But every once in a while, you experience situations when you sort of get, kicked back decades. So I was at a meeting in a European country not so many years ago. I think it was in 2019 rather than 2018. And it was a meeting of ministers of finance. So, and so it was a big meeting. And of course, as always, it was the mandatory photo, the picture, the group, family group picture. And all the guys, you know, they huddled up for the picture, and there was this one woman. And the photographer said, "Excuse me, only ministers, no spouses." And she was a minister. But it was like, well, it was a kind of a eye-opening experience in a way that this is actually something that can happen. Not, you know, it isn't 20 years ago, it's not 30 years ago, it's maybe 6, 7 years ago. But fortunately, I think we are moving, I hope so, we are moving fast in the right direction. But anyhow, so on with the show.
Thank you. Kelly?
Thank you again for joining us here, and thanks to everybody who came to this event today. I feel as a career diplomat, I have to say a couple of words about the women who are sitting in front of you. It's not just that we have 4 ambassadors from 4 continents. It's not just that we have 4 female ambassadors. Governments send their best to the United States. Okay, this is not a beginner kind of ambassadorship job. They are delivering in a big way for their governments. So it is quite a privilege to have them here today. So why are we meeting today? Well, we're about to celebrate International Women's Day, mark International World Women's History Month. And I wanted to ask you, in consideration of these events coming up, what seems to be the most urgent and the most hopeful about the condition of women's political participation these days? It's for all of you.
Thank you so much. I look at the people around the room. I think, talking to students, and I'm thinking in terms of like 20 years from now in foreign policy, they'll be dominating the scene. Meaning that really it's a growth that is going to transform, it's a transformative. So for me, it's something that I look at that is highly hopeful. And I can also give an example from my country. Women have been leading in my country, you know, in many different areas that if you talk about development, you have to go to women. All the space where the development is occurring, women are occupying. But what is positive about it is not so much about the women participating. It's also the young men, the young sons who are growing up, sitting on the lap of powerful women. You know, they started taking it very seriously. I've seen quickly, I'll say one thing. When we started to try the representation of women, we had to almost mandate it. It was like affirmative action. When we said 30% of all the public jobs and official staff have to be occupied by women. Because we had to change the constitution to put it in 2003. And then what happened was that when we did the elections, it was 30% of women.
30% quota of women, right?
Right.
Yes.
So they occupied the parliament. But when we elected again, it was 49%. So they surpassed whatever quota that was put in the staff, not so much because there was anything else being done, it's because they performed. So they started also to go in the space that usually was occupied by men. Now we are at 56%. There was a time, so this is because of performance and to be able to occupy the place once you occupy it. So this is why it strongly resonates, even, you know, all the stuff and the experience we are sharing right now. But it has been changing in Washington, D.C. because of the work that these women are doing. So once you do it, you are able to show, not so much, it's not to prove anything, but the effectiveness of your work. I think it can, more than anything, really establish that kind of self. Now, it's also true that, women are still lagging in many different countries because a number of structural barriers are still there. Whether you try to build a safe society for all women, but like I can go back to my country, the majority live in rural areas, so they don't have access, for instance, to the high-paying jobs. So they are still lagging, even when you are trying to say, okay, the women are performing, are doing this. So there are many, many different things we still need to do. That is also global. We see it when there's a conflict. Even in terms of conflict, women pay the price more than more people. They tend to the families, they do many different things. So there are things that we still have to do, but there's also much hope that we are reaching certain heights that we are not going to leave behind. Thank you so much.
I think that there's always a jet lag between the laws and between the practice, and especially when you see it in developing countries. We in Jordan have really advanced in our laws. You find that in parliament there's almost 20% participation. The new parliament laws have demand that a certain number of women, almost 50%, be part of a political party. So you see that a lot of changes have happened in the laws. In practice, some things work and some things need to work more. For example, in the labor force, women are the lowest in numbers partly because of unemployment, partly because of difficulty in having childcare, partly because transportation is difficult, many factors that the government is trying to deal with. But in the political sense, there's a self-censorship that is starting to go away. When you see an election, it is normal that the man in a tribal society or in a village, or that the men come forward. So for women to break that, it takes a lot of guts, and it always takes one or two examples. And I think in everything else, when you get these examples, you open the door, you're a trailblazer. And if you look at, for example, a lot of the government jobs, and you notice most of we have now like 5 women ministers and in main ministries, but a lot of times you find the men sitting at the table and the second and third row are all women. And we know that the second and third row are also people who are very important to get the work done. So if there's an example, it's to say about Jordan, is that the education is there, they're highly educated, and equal to men. In universities, they are even more than men. In the liberal jobs, lots of women, doctors, lawyers, etc. Their voice is heard, but we need them just to, that push to go into politics more and be more active. And there's no doubt that women in politics give something different than men do. I'm not saying that it's all different, but I always like to cite what a French woman journalist, feminist said. She said equality is when women who are as bad as men get to power. because right now women have to be always so good, and so that you always end up, either you get those who fought their way through and survived the system and therefore are good examples, or those who are pushed because they need to look, fill that space so that we can say. So I think that the natural, organic is the best way, and we're in that process.
Costa Rica has just elected the second female president, and she's 38 years old. Wow. Tell us about that impact of having had a woman president and what that has meant in your country for young girls and young women as they think about entering politics and public service.
So given that, what I wanted to talk about, which is related to that, it's also the topic of gender equality and peace, and I think it's very relevant to what's going on in the world right now. and how Costa Rica could be a country that could be an example for how that works out. So, just look at the data on the academic side. So it is very clear that the more gender equal a country is, the less conflict or the more peaceful it is, the less conflict with your neighbors, interstate conflicts you will have, the better economically a country will be. So that is for sure, that's something that the data has said for many years. However, that doesn't always reflect the policies in a country. So, but beyond the gender equality is you have to have gender equality and peace, which for me, in my case, I think they're equal. Most of the time, they're automatically. If you see a gender equal country, or the more gender equal country, the more peaceful that country will be. But also, it is about other things that make that country peaceful. Because what is peace? Is the absence of conflict? No. Having a peaceful country is beyond the not having conflict. It's about, and I have another, we're in the top 5 here, top 6 country with a happiness, kind of 2 of these are here. And it's about how do you provide social services to the people? How do you provide a good education system, a good health system? And also that allows for happiness, but that also includes the gender equality part. And I do have to say that Costa Rica is one of the top most gender equal countries in the region, in Latin America region. And then we are considered one of the, if not, but on the top most peaceful countries. And last year we became a high income country, which is a good but bad. Good and it sounds very nice, but a bad because then our any money that we want to get from World Bank or whoever, then it's going to be a lot more expensive to get. But it's also a country that many years ago decided we were going to abolish the army. So we are one of the few countries around the world, and I think we're, very, very few of us have that. And that also means, how do you see in the data the more equal, gender equal country is, the more peaceful and all of the other services that a country should have. I'm not saying that Costa Rica does not have a lot of challenges. Believe me, we have tons of other challenges. And I can start a list. But fighting with our neighbors is not one of them. And we have complicated neighbors. We have very complicated neighbors, and we, until now, have been able to keep it, diplomatically, kind of well versed. But then it goes back to women in politics. So, for example, about 53% of all the diplomats in Costa Rica are women. And we're one of the top together I think we're one of the 4th or 5th country. The top usually tend to be the Nordic countries with women ambassadors. So that's doing pretty good. And then we have a lot of laws that, as you said, don't always they sound very great in paper. We don't always make it operationalize them as well as they should. But it has to be, if the president is a woman, then now our vice president has to be a man, and the other way around too. And that, it doesn't always work that well, because sometimes the men are the ones who get the top job and then the woman the second job, but not in this case. In this case, we have, the top is going to be a woman, and then we're going to have two vice president men. So there's little changes that can be done in a society that if you do have gender equality, the quality of life of the people, of your people, is going to be a lot higher and a lot better.
And Iceland has both a female president and prime minister, right?
Yes, that's true. our prime minister is also 38, like your president, and she's a mother with small children. We actually have a coalition of 3 parties. We always have a coalition. The parties are all led by women. And of 6 parties in parliament, 5 of them are led by women. And, you know, more statistics, 47% of all members of parliament are women. More than half of the cabinet members are women, so 6 of 11. The bishop is a woman, and yes, we have now our 2nd female president. The first one democratically elected in the world was actually Icelandic, Valsdóttir. She was elected when I was 5, and we didn't get a man as a president until I was pregnant with my firstborn, and I was not a teenage mom. So it was for quite a long time, and it was actually, you know, it's a true story that there were kids in Iceland that actually thought that you couldn't be a president if you were a man. So, you know, things can change pretty fast. But what I always like to point out is that you have to sort of look at the foundation, that women and also men, they need to have a real choice. And for women to, you know, educate themselves, to, you know, be active in the labor market, to take part in politics and, you know, in whatever field they choose, they have to have the opportunity to do that. They have to be able to do that. And, you know, most of us would like to have a family as well. So maybe the foundation for a real choice and a happy society is to be able to have it all. And in Iceland, the foundations are laid by universal childcare system. So it's highly subsidized. So it's not actually a choice to, you know, decide to work instead of staying home with your kids. And also we have 12-month parental leave equally divided between the parents. So each gets 6 months, and there are only 6 weeks that are transferable between the parents. So right now, for instance, my son, who is, you know, the one that was born right after Ólafur Ragnar Grímsson became president, he now has 2 kids, and he is staying at home with his daughter, his 2nd child, and he'll be, you know, he's not going back to work until this fall, when she will, you know, enter one of the highly subsidized childcare facilities. But yeah, it's just sometimes you have to think about sort of the foundations, because you can have quotas, you can have all kinds of legal frameworks, but if you don't make it actually possible for people to take active part, then you can have all the laws in the world and they will not work. You know, it's about sort of also changing the social norms. I've been so, you know, fortunate, and women in Iceland, my age and younger, we have been so fortunate to have come after the trailblazers that paved the way for us. The women of Iceland who decided in 1975 to have a strike. They all left their work, whether it was, you know, at an actual workplace or at their home. They just walked out, left the men to do their jobs, and they suddenly found out that women were really, really important. And it was actually really hard to do all of this, you know, by themselves. And some kids found out that their dads actually could cook, maybe really simple dinners though. But they paved the way. A year after they walked out in 75, we got our first law, gender equality law. So it's 50 years since that. It's more than 10 years ago that we implemented quotas on corporate boards, which has proved quite successful. You know, before that, maybe around 23% of privately held companies had about half of boards with 40% of women. About 30%, because that's the threshold. You have to have at least 40% of each gender. Before that, it was about 20%, and now it's over 80%. So it's it's enforced by just social norms, because there isn't anything punitive in the laws about the quotas on corporate boards, but nevertheless companies do it. And I think that's one of the things that we can be hopeful about, is that actually when people see that things work, they get more mainstreamed. And this is, like, I think, Catalina, you said that it's in a way, it's an economic question as well, because if you decide to, utilize, and sorry for putting it that way, if you decide to utilize your entire workforce, your nation is going to prosper.
I'd like to give a follow-up on peacemaking, especially for Ambassador Kawar. The UN's Women, Peace and Security Agenda just celebrated its 25th year. But unfortunately, in many areas of the world and in the United States, it seems like participation by women in international affairs and peace and security issues is going backward. What can be done to reinvigorate the Women, Peace and Security Agenda at the UN?
Thank you. When we presided the Security Council, it's up to the president to decide whether they want to have a whole session on this issue, because some don't want to have it. It's like the longest session in the UN Security Council, because it starts in the morning and it finishes at the end of the day, and everybody wants to talk. So I remember I accepted to do it, and the importance for me is that unless, first of all, in wars, women are the first to be affected. When we were looking at war zones, women are left behind with the children, and they have to take care for their safety. They have to take care for providing them with whatever they need. They have to worry about their safety as women. And the stories that you hear during war, and it's horrible. So they get the double whammy of having to be left alone and to worry about what's going on. And then when it comes to negotiations or any form of peacemaking, they're usually absent. Though all studies show that women, when they are at the table, they manage to negotiate better. Now, I'm careful about this boy-girl thing, because I don't like to think that one is good and one is bad, and vice versa. And many times the system dictates women to think like men when they're in a political situation. It's not about you being a woman or not. Having said that, one thing I can vow for is when we were in the Security Council, we were 6 women, and that was a one-time thing. And never before did it happen, and never before after did it happen. And on the agenda and in the private meetings, when we used to have on war conflict zones, we used to bring up the issue of women, children, and the importance of the safety of this. And I remember it used to sometimes, we would get cynical, the boys would get cynical about it, or say, not again. And it's like a gaslighting of it, the whole issue, because it became a gender-related issue. But this is not gender-related. This is society. And like you said, if society has to be peaceful, you have to have the women and the children taken into account. So there are ups and downs on this issue, but we need to continue and to fight for it. And this has not to stay at the table, because without it, nothing can go forward. Unfortunately, this world has the number of refugees and the number of wars are becoming bigger in number and in the space, not to mention the migration issue that has become a big problem for everyone. So the issues at hand are way more complicated, complex, and difficult now than they were even 10 years ago when I was in the council. So the problem is expanding, and unless we address it, it is. And I know that my colleague from Rwanda, the problems of refugees is something, and conflict is a big thing for you. So, yes.
Before we go to questions, which will go in like 5 minutes, so in a minute or two, if anybody has a question, just form a line at the mic stand over there. I wanted to get back on something I read about Iceland that I thought was interesting, and there's a phrase in the culture that I will not even begin to try to pronounce, but it roughly translates to "women are the best to women." And I was wondering if you could just talk about that, because you all have spoken about sort of the sisterhood and the support that you all have as female ambassadors together. But in your country, this notion of women supporting other women, as we kind of reflect on International Women's Day and what that means to people, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, I actually have a really sort of personal example of that. I talked about, paying forward. Mm-hmm. So when I was probably 25 or something, there was this group of women who kind of decided to adopt me. So they were all successful. They were a generation ahead of me. One of them was the Minister of Justice. The others were high-flying lawyers and involved in politics in different ways. And they sort of decided, I don't know why, but they decided that they would include me in their group and sort of, share their experiences with me. And we met at least once a month for lunch, just talking about things. And this is something I have taken with me. So I have tried to do the similar things for women younger than I am. And also at the same time, a group of women who are all my friends now, we all knew of each other at the time. We were kind of active in politics at the time in different ways. We just decided to form a group. And we called ourselves, it was a secret society. So, we weren't supposed to talk about it, publicly, but we do now. And we decided that we were going to support each other in every way possible. And so every time someone asked, do you know of a woman that could speak, at this event? And we were like, yes, I know a woman. Or if someone asked, I'm looking for I have an open position here, I need to hire someone. We were always like, yes, we know someone. And it wasn't always, one of us. It was maybe a woman that one of us knew or had heard of or something. So we were just actively trying to, push women forward. So, put them forward. And this is something that I think men have been doing for centuries for each other. So we just thought, well, we're going to take a leaf from the book and do the same. And now it's been more than 25 years. We are in, we are in touch every day, and it's about everything. It's about, work-related things. It's about, once it was about, bringing up little kids. Now it's more about, how do you deal with menopause or whatever. When it comes to personal stuff, but it's a support group, and I think every woman needs to have a support group like that. And so, I'm always that's what I try to tell people, and I'm not telling only women that. I tell young people that, be supportive of each other. It's not all about competition, because if you support someone else, it's very likely that, maybe not you directly, but the society will benefit from it. And, indirectly, it will benefit you. So I think, yeah. So it's, if you asked about, yes, women being best to women, that's what we try to do and consistently. But we also have another one. I thought you were going to ask about þetta reddast, which is another Icelandic saying. It's about, it's all going to work itself out in the end. You might have to work towards that, but we're always hopeful. It's a little bit laissez-faire, attitude to life, but things will work themselves out. Do not stress too much.
Just a follow-up question for all of you. This year's International Women's Day theme is Give to Gain. And I just wanted to know what does that mean to you? And what is the most important investment that societies or governments can make in women for the greatest gain?
Thank you so much. I liked I think it was the women slogan that we used to say, lift as you climb. For me, that's how I see it. You know, it would be a waste to come here and then not inspire anybody or work with a group of young people. I think that there's no way we can get anywhere individually. It's a collective. And I think my colleagues have expanded much about the solidarity and, you know, being there for each other, not being transactional, you know. So I believe that's how I see it. So for me, I believe we all have a historical responsibility, because there was a time that we were not on the table. Now I think we have that historical responsibility to open doors for other people, if we can. Thank you.
I think, yeah, you said it so well. I would add mentorship. It's so important to help those who are starting their lives find their ways, and it does make a difference. So I believe in that a lot.
When I was hearing you talking, I was like, wow, that sounds so great. And that's why Nordic countries do such a fantastic job at showing the rest of us, because I grew up with a very different experience. The Latin American experience, at least in my generation, was there's only one space for one woman, and we're all going to compete against each other for that one space. I know that it's not that way. There is many spaces for many women, and men have done this to help each other. Oh, let's call whoever and let's give them that job. But women, at least in my region, we don't do that to each other, which is a huge, huge problem. So the way that societies think, that societies put women to compete against each other is a huge problem, I think. That's already a big problem, because we're, you know, there is enough space for all of us in really good positions. But if I call somebody and they're like, oh, we want somebody from peace. Oh, I know that she was ambassador for whatever. Or I know that she's a specialist in this. Or I know, and that makes that issue of sisterhood like real. And I do have to acknowledge that throughout my career, I have not found that sisterhood until I came to be ambassador here. So I've been here for over 3 years, and that sisterhood, friendship that we do events together, we do things together. That has not been something that I have found. However, I do think that because of my previous job on looking at prevention of wars and how the importance of women, and so the Costa Rican embassy, I'm the ambassador, a woman. My DCM is a woman, Natalia, also a woman. My chauffeur is one of the few women chauffeurs. Because you don't only have to say how important it is, but you have to live it and actually say like, oh, this is important. Yeah, but are you living it that way? Are you? So yes, we try. I try to make a difference. I hope I can be as good as the women in your country, and I can learn from, but I think we've all learned from each other, and for me, it's been an honor to work with at least the ones that are here, but there's many more of our colleagues that are not here today, but it's fantastic.
Yeah, well, thank you for the kind words, Catalina. But it's just my life's philosophy, and I share that with many women and just many people in Iceland, is that the greatest gift is sharing. So share your experience, share your time, but also as we grow older, be open to new things, and that maybe the generation that comes after us experiences things a little bit differently. So, we have to also be able to adapt. But I think the most important thing is just to be kind to other people. and be prepared to, as Mathilde said, to lift other people. We all want to get to a higher ground, and the way to do it is by lifting people, not by stepping on them.
That's a great message. Okay, speaking of sharing, we're going to share this microphone here for the questions.
Can you do it? Yeah, actually, perfect. Perfect. Try to get once I answer the question. Thank you for the reminder, because I tend to forget to introduce myself. Thank you, AU, for putting on a fantastic Women in Politics event. I'm happy to share with you that this year is my second year coming. And ambassador from Rwanda, and also ambassador from Costa Rica. So good to see you both. It's my second time seeing you. Sorry, I need a little, my heart is pumping because I'm excited to ask my question. First, let me do a little introduction. Again, my name is April Tan, and I'm proud to share with this group because it is a safe group to share, because we are in the DNV. And specifically, I am a Virginia now, particularly a Restonian. With that being said, above all, I am a proud Cambodian, Chinese, refugee, New Yorker. But we are in the DNV. With that being said, I have aspire to be an ambassador since my high school days. My second time coming to DC after American history class. My first time was actually my Canadian relatives who came to visit us in New York City. And of course, the best, most efficient in all sense of the word, from time to cost to camaraderie and community on the bus, we participated in a bus tour to DC. But remember, I have been a wannabe ambassador since high school, because the high school trip was so amazing, Sorry.
We have a line of people, so
yes.
Can you get
to
your
I'm
quick
wrapping
question?
It up. Sorry, I'm
quick
wrapping
question.
up. So amazing that I got to see Bush 1 in the Rose Garden. Here's my question for all the ambassadors. I would love to hear, my goal is to be an appointed ambassador. Hence, I ran for Congress for District 11 in the special election. With that being said, again, my goal has always been wanting to be an ambassador, an appointed ambassador for the United States to Asia. With that being said, what is my advice? What advice, Ambassador, are you able to give me? I know I prefer to hear the advice from ambassador to the U.S. versus the U.S. ambassador to other country.
I think that's great, and I think it's an important question because especially we have so many young women here also who may want to go into the Foreign Service, right? May want to be ambassadors one day. And so could you share just a little bit of advice on how we should think about the next steps getting into the Foreign Service, what that means? What's your best piece of advice for anybody that is aspiring to the world of ambassadorhood? And Kelly, you'd be a great resource on this too. I'll give you the mic.
Sure. So, I mean, the best way to become a U.S. ambassador is to take and pass the Foreign Service exam and, establish a career in diplomacy. It will take, many decades to achieve that dream, but that is the most reliable way to get into the diplomatic corps.
Is there an age cutoff
I
in foreign service?
Yeah, you have to pass the exam before a certain age, but I can't remember exactly what it is. You have to retire by 65.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, next question. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, my name is Jessica. I'm a student here of United States Foreign Policy and National Security in my first year. Thank you all for coming. I really enjoyed hearing what you had to say. You all talked a little bit about things your countries have done to encourage women into politics and in general toward gender equity. But I was wondering if you guys, what your thoughts were on what the international community and international organizations, what role they have in encouraging gender equality and women in politics, specifically to enter that field.
Great, thanks, Jessica. Anybody want to take that? You're good.
So I can tell you about my country, and then we can look from a global perspective. But one of the, what I'm telling you is not to brag that women have arrived anywhere. It was, you have to look first at our history and the context. You really can't understand also the rise of women in Rwanda without understanding that. It's not because it just came or we were better than, it's because our context and history asked and drove us to make the women as full citizens as other people. They had to contribute. We lost more than 1 million people. And once we were setting our vision for a better Rwanda, we were saying each individual, regardless of gender, has to contribute to whatever we are going to become, especially when we were thinking in terms of reconciliation in looking at society, the women had to be central. And so that setup really drove us to make sure that women are represented everywhere. In our peacekeeping missions, Rwanda is one of the biggest contributors. Women are present. In our police department, women are present. In our military police, women are present. The one who is heading our airline is a woman. So what I'm saying is not to brag, but what I'm saying is it's a part of history, it's a part of the context we are in, understanding that really very specifically, I think it was Secretary Hillary Clinton who said that women's rights should be human rights of the world. That's how we see it. And what I'm saying, all the difficulties that we mentioned, they were still there because it had to be codified through the legal processes. This is why, for instance, the Constitution was changed. To change that by legal means so we can apply that to come. Before, women couldn't inherit. Like, for instance, because we were in a patrilineal society, the inheritance went through men. But that Constitution changed that. Nationality changed that. So I think we had to do a number of those stuff. So that's why in international organizations, even the ones that are global, you find Rwanda and women. I can talk about the Francophonie that is global. It's led by women. What we call Africa, NBA Africa is led by women. Who is a Rwandan? It's because there is a preparation. That has to be by also promoting the areas like STEM programs and so on and so forth, so the women also can catch up in development. So our ICT, and we are ahead in technology, is led by women. So all those stuff is about preparation, it's about intent, but also it's realizing that by removing women, you are really removing yourself. Because during that time, we had to do this. I have to do one more thing to tell you this. It's not, they didn't come in a very glamorous way. I have to tell you, for instance, some of the best organizations in Rwanda, the best, they were led by women who were infected by HIV. During that time, they are the ones, if you go and you can go and, there are some movies on it, but the people who were able to show what women could do together came out of women who were suffering also for a big loss. 500,000 women who were infected during genocide. So what I'm saying is, it's not coming from the top. It's also looking at how people were able to deal with the circumstances of their lives. And that was able to push also how women saw themselves in that society. Thank you so much.
I think the question was also on international organizations. If you look at the UN, I mean, definitely, I agree with what you said. It's a political will. If there's no political will to push all the boundaries, it becomes complicated. But at the UN, I must say the issue of women and gender equality is very important high up. And by the way, the person leading the UN Women is a Jordanian lady who's also had a very long and beautiful career and is doing a lot on this issue. So it's very important that international organizations that represent also the international ethics are leaders, because they set the road.
Okay, next question. Want to introduce yourself?
Hello, Your Excellencies. Thank you all for coming today. My name's Reese. I'm a first-year grad student here at SIS. And it seems like the common theme among the four of you today is that when there's greater representation of women in your countries, the standard of living, the happiness, it all goes up. But it also seems like to start that journey, you need to have, whether it's a legal or proverbial quota for female representation. I guess my question is, how do you get the society of the country behind such a measure, behind implementing that first quota to eventually get more women into serving?
Great question, Reese. Who wants to take that?
This is actually a kind of a hard question, because you can always say what you did, but sort of why it worked is sometimes a little more complicated. I already told you that we had the first, comprehensive gender equality law in '76. So affirmative action played quite a big role within, at least, especially in the public sector, and I think it's we have this saying in Iceland that there's the drop that hollows the stone. So the more you do, the deeper the mark will be, and the more women you get in places, at the table where decisions are made, the more it just becomes more of a norm. So you can have the legal framework, which we did, and we amended that legal framework. We have done it plenty of times, sort of moving with the times. But I think, in a way, it's like, who doesn't really, when you think about it, who doesn't want equality? Who doesn't want both their sons and daughters to have equal rights and equal opportunities? Do you really want to look at, because sometimes I think about, Iceland, because we have closed more than 90% of the gender gap, and that's great. But then again, it's like, am I going to say to my daughters, you'll be fine because, you're almost as valued as my son? It's, I think it has to do with the legal framework. It has to do with, that frame, or those laws being enforced. But in the end, it's a lot about public sentiment, and also doing a lot of things, because it's not the one thing that works. Sometimes you have to implement quotas, sometimes not. That has actually never been done. There has never been a mandatory quota for the parliament in Iceland, but nevertheless, we have about half women. Some parties do that, some don't. They have just about the same number of men and women, representing them. Also, I just forgot what I'm going to say. Sorry. It's but it's about, doing a lot of things. And and one thing, because the thing is that often money talks. So what we did in Iceland was we introduced gender responsive budgeting. So you actually have to think about it when you allocate money for the, in the budget every year, how you're using that money. Does it have a gender effect? And so that has been sort of mainstreamed into all decisions made for the official budget in Iceland. So it's, I think, it's just plenty of things. Someone here might have a better answer and sort of more comprehensive than I do, but it's about do as much as you can in as many places as you can with as many people as you can, and hopefully it works.
Well, Rwanda, you mentioned the quota of 30%. Now it's beyond the quota, right? I mean, you have almost 60% of women, right? So how does it take hold and become something that you probably don't even need the quota anymore, right?
No, we don't need the quota anymore. And what happened is it's really performance.
Mm-hmm.
It's a performance because once the elections are open, people will look at people who are performing. Mm-hmm. And also the women, again, that solidarity, they do campaign for other women because I think, especially in rural areas, because we have a decentralized government. So so you talked also about the rigor processes because that's very important, but also we have what we call gender monitoring system. Mm-hmm. Those have to be anchored on something else. It's not just about talking about equality and do this, because also we have those structural barriers that were established a long time ago, including the whole patriarchal understanding on how equality could be. So number one, for us as a society, we're a very patriarchal society as much. So we have what we call national dialogue where the people are really exchanging. It took place in December. It has been going on for the last 20 years. People talk about gender issues. It's the whole nation talking, and it's also what I was saying, almost decentralized. But the other thing, too, the accompanying thing, I was mentioning the jobs that women, for instance, are doing. One of the scourge of women disempowerment, for instance, was family violence. You understand, maybe gender violence. So you had to create those kind of systems to accompany that. So when you go and report on something, we've created stuff that are called like one-stop center. When you go, usually when you are how would I say it, a victim of gender violence, it's hard to say. There are many places, especially when it comes from families, where you can actually go and say this thing. But that one-stop center has also like a female policeman, a gynecologist, someone who can understand that cause and be able also to ensure confidentiality. So that has slowly but surely also allowed women to be speaking out about stuff that are not going very well in their country and in their families and so on and so forth. So I think all these things, the rigor framework, or they have to be anchored on something else, like the changes, the mindset, the teaching. Once you start also for young people, that's why I said at the beginning that generations being born now don't have any problem with gender equality, because they grew up on the lap of those people who are pushing. But before, of course, you had to fight higher for the people to be able to carry the job of the first pioneers, because there are women who are pioneers on all this thing. But I think we are in that place where women now are capable, they are well trained, they are well educated, sometimes even higher. So it means that also they are pushing to maintain those kind of structures.
Thank you, Reese, for the
Thank
question.
you.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Trish Floyd. I'm a recent graduate of the We Lead 2026 program. So good to see Betsy, and everyone tonight. Or I'm sorry, today. Sorry, we were up really late last night. My question, I enjoy hearing you all speaking about the gender equality piece, which I definitely think is very important. To that point, when it comes to breaking down the subsections of gender equality amongst race and color, what does that look like in your seats as ambassadors? Do you all use think tanks? How do you all gather information to learn how is the policies that we are putting forward are reaching everyone, even the most vulnerable? And what does that look like?
Take that? Yes.
One thing, because I think one thing that we've done because you are right, because you can always talk about gender equality and you see it in public, space, especially for people who are participating in high offices for women. But that's why we have that thing that is very highly functional in Rwanda that goes throughout the local government and in the villages, what they call gender monitoring agency, to see if women issues are addressed even on local level. Otherwise, like what you are saying, it wouldn't really be, you can talk, there are many things. We still have, I have to tell you, we still have many issues we are working on, especially like when it comes to health in the rural area. But now what we are trying to do is to have a comprehensive picture that is addressing the inequalities, be able to put them even women in the rural area to have finance capabilities, to be able to tend for their families. So all those stuff are seen together in a whole, but to see that the women are not left behind because of what I called the historical and structural barriers, that agency does just that, full-time. It's a gender monitoring agency, to see if they are not, because you are a young woman, because you have poverty in your family, and then your parents don't want you to finish, primary school because you have to work on the farm. All those stuff are seen, so there are not many people left behind. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Trish. Okay, let's see. Let's try to do the last two together. If you want to quickly introduce yourselves and do your question, and then we'll see if we can answer them rapid fire here.
Sure. Thank you. My name is Catherine Volk. I'm an undergraduate here in SIS. My question is for all of you, whoever wants to answer. You've all talked about how your own countries and the international system has created legal structures for gender equality. However, we're still very far from that, especially in the field of international relations. I was curious what your view of initiatives that don't have any legal impact, such as the 1 in 8 billion campaign, affect the field of international relations, and how those campaigns, even though they don't have any legal force of law, can improve gender equality in the field.
Okay, that's a great one. So initiatives, and what is your question?
And hi, my name is Erica. I'm a second-year graduate student here. Ambassador Kawar, you mentioned that at different positions in your career, particularly your time in the UN Security Council, you didn't know exactly what you were doing at first, but sometimes ignorance is good and that it's best to jump in the deep end. And I was just wondering, for young professionals like a lot of us who are about to enter this field, who have a lot of passion and enthusiasm, but maybe little experience, how can we best leverage our experiences to do the best job that we can?
Great question.
Let me answer the last one, because it sounds like I went in No. I had been ambassador in France for 13 years in the diplomatic service. But when I said it with a bit of humor, it's just to say that the UN has so many, the UN Security Council has so many rules and regulations that when you're a permanent member, like the 5 permanent members, there's a whole different training to it for an ambassador, whereas when you come in for 2 years, you have to learn it and study it. And usually members who are about to become in the Security Council spend the last 2 years preparing, which is something I didn't have that luck to. So what I was trying actually to say is that you go in and there's something about a political sense, your nose somehow. In life it is. And that's something that I would like to say to every young person in their lives. When you see an opportunity, grab it. And don't be afraid of failure, because failure in the worst case scenario will teach you something, and then you will not do it again. And if it's not failure, then you've chosen the same thing. There's nothing wrong with failing, actually. Politicians fail a lot before they get where they want, and that's something that I would say is very important for the young generation around. So that's what I meant to say. I was not scared, and you have to. Don't be foolish. I mean, don't make a fool out of yourself either. But when you don't know something, ask and try to learn, and don't be embarrassed to ask questions, even if they look basic. It's better than doing basic mistakes.
Yeah, great advice. Catalina, do you want to weigh in on the question about initiatives and impact that they can make, especially, I guess, maybe in the issues of human rights and getting more women involved?
Sure. So I think the question was more towards initiatives that are coming outside of each country, so more international kind of initiatives.
Yeah.
I think they do work well for some countries. For some other ones, it depends. My main concern with that is that sometimes they're not contextualized based on the needs or the culture of each country. So as you can see, we are coming from 4 different regions, 4 different countries, and the culture and the social cues and rules are very different in all of us. So I have an issue when organizations like the UN or OAS or just say like, oh, this is what we're going to do. But what we're going to do, it's going to work very different in Costa Rica and Iceland and Jordan. It's very, very different. So unless you contextualize it for the culture that you're going to, it's going to be more difficult. So that would be my only concern that I've seen many, many, many times done. And ideas that started out as a great idea, they fail. And they fail mainly because it's not taken into account, the context.
Yeah, please.
Also would like to add our experience with the international organizations is many times we have initiatives and we go to them for them to help us. And usually when you do that, like when we did with the World Bank and gender equality, it tends to work better because they hear us, they listen to us, and then work with our parameters.
Great. Well, before everyone leaves, I want to let you know that we have a lot more events. You should have gotten a flyer or get one on your way out for Women's History Month. We're doing an event every Wednesday. We call it Women on Wednesdays. And we don't just do that during Women's History Month. We do it all year long, but we're doing a lot of them this month. So we hope you all will join us for that. A lot of them are online, so they're accessible to anybody. And please join me in thanking this a terrific, distinguished panel today. I think we learned a lot today, and they've given us a lot to think about. And thank you all for being here and helping to celebrate International Women's Day. Thank you.